You know, in the recent history of the United States of America, we've seen a lot of single moments, single incidents, single events that have changed the course of this country politically, but typically these events, these incidents, change the course of America towards a more left-wing direction and a significantly worse direction. One of the biggest examples of an incident like this is, of course, the death of George Floyd, which led to the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement, defunding the police, accelerated the election of these left-wing woke, not gonna prosecute anybody type of prosecutors, but typically we don't see events that cut the other direction. Typically we don't have incidents that are moments of clarity that push us in the opposite way. And a perfect example of something that should be one of those incidents that should push us in the opposite way is what has been going on with the city of San Francisco. Now, on this channel, we've covered the decay of San Francisco multiple different times. I've attributed this to a lot of combinations of policies that not only affect the state of California, but actually affect the entire western part of the United States of America, like the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruling that people have this divine right to camp in public that supersedes anybody's rights because homeless people need God-tier rights, at least in the western part of this nation. But it turns out all of that was a farce. It turns out all of that didn't really exist. It turns out that when push comes to shove, when the governor and the mayor of San Francisco and the city council of San Francisco want to actually clean up the city, they could do so in record time. Because right now, if you guys are unaware, the encampments have been cleared. The metro stations have been deep cleaned. The streets have been swept. The needles, the human waste, all of that has been removed due to the fact that a bunch of important people, much more important than the residents of the city of San Francisco, much more important than the businesses in the city of San Francisco, have come into town for a visit. Because Xi Jinping is here, San Francisco is now clean for the first time in a decade, and we have to talk about what this means for American political discourse. But before we do, I just want to say thank you to everybody who signed up over on actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?
And thank you to the podcast listeners, Spotify, Apple, and Google's podcasting platform.
Our cameras spotted this early this morning. Park rangers clearing people off of the sidewalk. And this, piles of trash littered all over the sidewalks. Mountains of trash are what some people in the Tenderloin have learned to live with day in and day out. And there is a team of people who pick all of it up and haul it off, only to come back again, sometimes only hours later, to another giant mess.
So I thought it was important to open up with how San Francisco used to be a long, long time ago, all the way back in the far-off year of 2023, in the far-off month of October of 2023. Yes, 1 month ago, this was the state of San Francisco and their cleanup efforts. They would send out people. Sometimes they would clear up the homeless encampments in the major thoroughfares, major foot traffic areas within the city. And within a couple of hours, even if they picked up all the garbage of the homeless people, they would be back and there would be more litter there than there was before.
Yeah, at times you feel like our efforts are for none, right? Because we'll go right through a block and they'll turn around and just dump it right back out on us. It almost just seems like it's an thankless and effortless job, right? Because, I mean, look at it.
This was the hopeless cycle that the city of San Francisco supposedly was in circa October 5th of 2023, aka last month. This is what we were told was the norm. It was unchangeable. There was nothing they could do about it. Politicians were doing their absolute best, but this is just the state of the city that you citizens have to accept. But now, all of a sudden, things are completely different. All of a sudden, when a deep clean is needed in order to welcome a bunch of foreign people for APEC 2023, including the president of China, Xi Jinping, they can do a cleanup that can last for the whole length of the conference. And I think it is incredibly crucial that you guys understand exactly how they're doing this, because it's things that I described that you could implement before that we were told was absolutely impossible that now suddenly are possible. They are easy to do, and apparently it didn't even cost the city of San Francisco any additional funds to do so. They had the money on hand all along. They just were never committed to actually cleaning up the city.
While San Francisco is in the spotlight for the Asia Pacific Economic Conference, city leaders are making sure the city shines. Tourism is our business here in San Francisco, and we need to focus on making sure that the tourist dollars still come back.
Caltrans repaving major roadways like the Harrison Street off-ramp from the I-80. BART doubling down by deep cleaning their stations overnight more often.
The city had gotten a little bit dingy over time.
Scrubbing and power washing is happening all over the city.
Yeah, the bottom of my shoes look clean.
It's noticeable how clear the streets look and how few homeless encampments there are on major thoroughfares.
Look at that. Look at the difference. Look at what is actually possible in the city of San Francisco when people start visiting the city of San Francisco that politicians in that city and statewide in California actually think are important. Then all of a sudden, we got to emphasize sprucing the place up, deep cleaning the metros, paving off-ramps to highways because, your everyday citizens definitely don't need that, but Xi Jinping needs a nice off-ramp. All of a sudden, all of this stuff is completely possible. All of a sudden, you should be able to walk on the streets of San Francisco, look at the bottom of your shoe, and your shoe should be clean. All of a sudden, expectations are completely changed when we've been told for years in the city of San Francisco that it's completely impossible to do anything about the problems within the city. And before, when they did a cleanup and the trash returned just hours later, there was nothing you could do but throw your hands up and say, okay, I guess we tried, not a big deal. This is what is possible in the state of California. This is what is possible when politicians actually care. When they're not interested in funneling money to well-connected people who work in the homeless industrial complex, and they're actually interested in cleaning up the city and making it presentable for visitors. All of a sudden, their business is tourism. All of a sudden, they care about getting people back in hotel rooms. If you'll remember, we had done a bunch of stories about giant hotels in San Francisco that completely closed because tourism dollars and visitors and room occupancy had never returned since the pandemic. All of a sudden, they're going to be monitoring people who are breaking into vehicles because San Francisco had become one of the car breaking capitals in the entire world. But now that we have all these foreign people coming in, they're going to be cracking down on that significantly. When you were visiting San Francisco from another country and you were an ordinary person or another part of this country and you had a break-in and you lost your passport, your luggage, your ID, or whatever, that was no big deal. They just had to adjust the way the San Francisco airport worked so that people could leave the city without their ID, get on a plane in that way.
And the city did tidy up for Dreamforce, but this cleanup is much more extensive.
But now that they have the important people, the Asian Pacific Economic Conference, all of a sudden, things that were not possible before, that the court rulings prevented from being done, are not only possible, but they're able to be done, even though just a month before, as I documented, this was considered the thing that could never get done. And it goes even further than this. There's actually another local news segment that I found that said that scaffolding that had been there for months around a clock tower had been removed.
At the Ferry Building, visitors and locals alike can delight in the new and improved clock tower. After months of renovation, the scaffolding has been removed. And down by Pier 39, this site catching the eyes of tourists like Anya Ustinova, visiting from Vancouver, Canada.
I like it. Yeah, I think it's totally worth it.
The Ferris wheel that was at Golden Gate Park is now at the waterfront area.
I did love seeing it there, but I love seeing it here too. So wherever, as long as it stays in the city, we'll go wherever it goes.
They relocated a Ferris wheel in order to make it more aesthetically pleasing in the new area, and all these things are being done in San Francisco at the drop of a hat. One of these places that can't even build a toilet for free when the company offered to do it for free for under $1 million just made it possible in a single moment.
Having been a longtime resident in the Bay Area, you just naturally start to wonder of houseless folks being displaced.
So even though this guy is saying it from a left-wing, progressive, ultra-compassionate to the point of self-destruction kind of way, it is an important question to ask government officials in the state of California, because homeless people are suddenly being displaced. The encampments are suddenly being crushed by the police, by all these different organizations, and it's interesting to ask the question where they're able to put these people, because before we were told it was objectively impossible to remove these people from the streets, but all of a sudden, when there's the will to do so, they can just do it.
Public Works is installing decorative crosswalks in North Beach and Chinatown, and the Webster Street pedestrian bridge in Japantown was recently repainted. The Yerba Buena Gardens at the Moscone Center are decked out with new colorful landscaping and murals, paid for by the Clean California Grant, just in time for the 20,000 high-profile CEOs and heads of state coming into town next week.
Again, this goes above and beyond the basic things that you expect from a local government like San Francisco, especially such a wealthy local government with such exorbitant taxes like they have in San Fran. It's not only cleaning up the streets, it's not only paving the roads. All of a sudden, they have time for public art. They have time to repaint murals on all these different areas to just beautify the city, make it stunning. And again, this should be begging the question for residents of San Fran as to why this wasn't possible a month ago, why they were doing reports from the same local news agencies about how this problem was unsolvable less than 30 days ago.
Some people say this should be how it's always done.
What about the people who are here year-round, and like local, hardworking, working-class Bay Area folks?
And this guy, even though he sounds like a stoner, even though he's the one who asked where the homeless be at, is actually reaching that conclusion despite the fact that the cannabis has been eating up his brain for years in San Francisco, which is, wait a minute, you could have done this before? What about the residents? What about the people who actually work here? What about the people in this city who are being victimized by all these car break-ins and all these other problems? How is this possible for this event, for these visitors, for these CEOs, for these heads of state, but it was completely impossible for the residents of San Francisco, despite the fact that these politicians were being shouted at out town halls, despite the fact that businesses are closing at an ever-increasing rate, despite the fact that loans are just being churned over and surrendered, and properties as well, to creditors all across the city of San Francisco up until this very moment. But now, suddenly, it's just easily fixed, no big deal. We can do things above and beyond fix the problems, like decorate the city, decorate the sidewalk, and put all this money that apparently we had this whole time into beautifying this place for Xi Jinping. Now, it actually goes even further than this cleanup. They've actually put up temporary barriers to make the area look like a dystopia in certain parts of San Francisco in order to prevent the encampments from returning to this area. There's also partnerships between San Francisco PD, California state troopers, and federal law enforcement in order to enforce laws against the homeless people if they dare think about returning during the time of this conference, that all of a sudden can be applicable in this particular area just for this conference. All of a sudden, felony charges are possible, prison time is possible, incapacitation is possible, and relocation of homeless people all on the table when Xi Jinping is coming to town. And what's even more amazing about this is that Gavin Newsom admitted that this is a special thing specifically for these important people that are better than the average everyday citizen of California.
Folks say, oh, they're just cleaning up this place because all those fancy leaders are coming into town. That's true, because it's true. But it's also true for months and months and months prior to APEC. We've been having different conversations.
Yeah, that's right. Gavin Newsom just made it clear to the residents of California, the residents of the city of San Francisco, to laughter, by the way, that they don't matter, that their right to live in a clean city does not exist, but Xi Jinping matters. The CEOs that are visiting, those people actually matter. In fact, Gavin Newsom will travel all the way to China to get on his knees and beg Xi Jinping to come over to San Francisco, play basketball against kids, get locked up by an 8-year-old to the point where he has to throw a flagrant foul. Because he thinks these people are more valuable than your average everyday citizen of San Francisco, than your average resident, than tourists from other parts of the country. All of these people don't matter to Gavin Newsom, but these CEOs, they supersede that. They supersede the God-tier rights of the residents of San Francisco. And it's incredibly important for you guys to know that this cleanup is hyper-localized. This is specifically for this event, and this is not, like Gavin Newsom said, them looking at the problems differently for months and implementing these solutions, and this being the first step. As this was happening in San Francisco on the I-10 freeway, one of the things that we saw, which is in another part of California, was a massive fire that just kicked off right there. What started this blaze? What was the problem with this blaze? It was a massive homeless encampment that they've allowed to fester for years and years and years. So if you're in another part of California that Xi Jinping is not visiting, congratulations, you have to be subordinated to the rights of the homeless people, even to the point where there's a dangerous, deadly blaze being formed because their rights supersede yours. But all of a sudden, again, and I've repeated myself so many times throughout this video, when important people show up, those rights of the homeless don't exist, because then the city has to be made presentable for Gavin Newsom's new boss. Look, I invite any of you to look at the before and afters of the city of San Francisco so that you could see for yourself how dramatic the changes actually are. But keep in mind, this is meant to be a reminder to you that your thoughts, your will, your desires do not matter. That the only time these people actually care about doing something decent for the citizens is when it benefits them and the look that they're trying to portray to the world. Make no mistake about it, as soon as these people leave, enforcement will be pulled back, the encampments will return, but it doesn't have to be this way, and you'll have to remember that going forward when they tell you that there's nothing that they could do. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you liked the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the great San Francisco cleanup. Till next time.